Today is December 9th, 2023. I'm Cynthia Frances Gensheimer, and I am interviewing Jennifer Miller Dechtman at her home in Denver for the Colorado National Council of Jewish Women's Oral History Project. Jennifer, I'm going to start by asking you a few questions about your background. Would you please tell me your parents' names, including your mother's maiden name?
My parents are H. Michael Miller and Barbara Louise Levin Miller, and she goes by Bobby Lou. And what was the other question?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. And were you born in Denver? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, I was born in Denver at Rose Hospital.
And can you tell me a little bit about how your parents' families came to Colorado?
Sure. My dad's family has been in Colorado for several generations. My kids are fifth generation Denverites, and they originally came. My great grandfather, Joe Miller. It's kind of funny you sat me here because I actually have this is Joe Miller and his 6 sons, and they came. They were in the cattle business, and they were fixtures in the Denver community. They were very involved in starting the BMH synagogue. And my dad grew up in Denver. My dad went to East High School. His brothers went to East High School. His father went to East High School, Ben Miller. And my son actually went to East High School. So there's a lot of continuity. My mother came to Denver because she met my dad. My dad was going to law school in New York City, and my mom was in school in New York City. She's from Norfolk, Virginia, and they were set up on a date, and they fell in love, and she told her parents, I'm marrying a Jewish cowboy. And so she moved to Colorado. Where, in fact, he wasn't really a cowboy because he's an attorney, but they were in the cattle business.
So this great-grandfather who came to Denver, was he an immigrant himself?
Joe Miller, yes.
Joe Miller? Mm-hmm. And where did he come from? Do you know?
He's from Russia. Well, I think it was actually part of Ukraine, which is now Ukraine. He was from Vilna.
So your father grew up in an observant Jewish household?
Yes, they not far from here on 8th and St. Paul. We always pass it almost every day. And my grandfather built the house. My actually great-grandfather, Joe Miller, built the house. My name's Jennifer Joe for Joe Miller. He was the patriarch of the Miller family here in Denver. And there are many Miller cousins that all started at that house on St. Paul. So he had 6 sons, and he would have a ballroom in the basement so he could have dances for his sons so they could find wives, and they had many holiday dinners there, and there's a lot of stories about that house on St. Paul. So I love to pass it all the time and think about all those stories.
So in his business, he was buying and selling cattle, basically?
So they had a large ranch. It actually was a large part of the state of Wyoming, the Miller Ranch in Wyoming. They also had feedlot lots here in Colorado, in Montbello, in Greeley. It was a large cattle operation.
So would he travel there to?
So they had
the
a
ranch?
foreman, but yes, all the brothers. So Joe Miller and then his sons, and my grandfather Ben Miller, and all the brothers who are in this picture at the ranch. It says Joe Miller and Company, and then they're all on horses. They would travel to the ranch, and all my cousins they would go too when they were younger. A lot of the my dad's generation would work at the ranch in the summer. My dad went with his friend Johnny Levy, who had started has a long history in Denver as well. And they got into a lot of trouble at the ranch because they weren't quite the horsemen, the cattle people that some of the cousins were. And that's why he ended up going into law. But I think they'd broken one of the signs, and they're like, you know what? It's okay. You can go into another profession. But all of the brothers, my grandfather's brothers, had other professions as well. Doctors, my grandfather was an attorney. They all had professional degrees when they also worked for the ranch.
So Joe Miller, when he arrived, had his family been in the cattle trading business in what's now Ukraine?
No, he started all of that himself here in Colorado.
So why did he come to Colorado? Do you know why he came to Colorado
I'm
originally?
not sure. My Uncle Steve would know. But no,
Okay.
I'm not sure what brought him to Colorado. I know he originally went to Montana. I think it was probably around the time like everyone else, like looking for silver, looking for gold, part of the gold rush.
Uh-huh. Okay. So did your father have a bar mitzvah at BMH?
Yes. We actually found, we had the catering order from the bar mitzvah, and it was with my first boss as a lawyer, Gary Bloom's father was the caterer. So that was always a fun thing to show Gary.
And did he have a grow up in a kosher household?
Yes, they're kosher, and there's many stories about preparing all the holidays when they would like make their own corned beefs, and they would like get ready for weeks. All the aunts would come over, and they would be preparing all the food, and everything was kosher. They would always have the rabbis over. So there's so many wonderful rabbis that were in Denver, and they were a big part, very good friends with the Miller family.
And what about your mother's family growing up? Were they equally observant?
So my mother's family in the South, and the whole history of the Southern Jews, it's had a very big influence on me, and just hearing about like all the social justice issues and things that would come up in Virginia. They were very much pillars of the community in Norfolk, very social, and they were actually belonged to two different synagogues just for social reasons because they wanted to connect with two different communities. So, but they were not as observant, and she did not grow up kosher.
So they belong to a Reform and a conservative congregation?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
And the Temple Bethel is one of the oldest conservative congregations in the South.
And what made her decide to go to college in New York then?
So she went to a really special college. It was called Finch College, which isn't there now. But at the time, it was just an amazing college in New York City where they had like a box at the Opera House. And she learned so much about art history and culture. And she studied everything, poetry, English. It was a really special school it was a women's school. And I love hearing the stories about Finch, and it was next to the Carlisle Hotel, so they used to date and go into the bar at the Carlisle Hotel, and just wonderful stories when she went to school in New York City.
And did you say your father was in law school at that time?
Yes.
And where did he go to law school?
He went to Columbia.
And how did that, having grown up in Denver, how did he decide to go to Columbia?
He has a lot of interesting stories how he ended up at Columbia, and he went to University of Colorado undergrad, and when he was first applying to Columbia, I think they had said, "Oh, we don't take kids from University of Colorado," and he told the governor or someone in his family had talked to the governor, and he's like, "Well, that's not right," and they talked to someone, and long story short, he ended up at Columbia Law School, and he did very well there and loved being in New York City. And then my daughter, years later, she also went to Columbia.
And so when you were growing up, one of three sisters, right?
Yes.
How would you describe your household in terms of religious observance? Did you belong to BMH when you were growing up?
So my dad was the president of BMH when I was younger, and then he's been the president 3 times because he cares so much about preserving the history there. And it's interesting because now my sister is the president of BMH. So there's a lot of history there at that synagogue, and just really trying to, respect the tradition and the community there. It's a very special, unique synagogue, different than anywhere else in the country as far as like its observances, and it's very special. And so when we were growing up, we did not keep kosher in the house, but we did a lot around the synagogue. So we would go to like the sukkah at the synagogue. We would observe many of the holidays at the synagogue. But later in life with my family, we were able to build a sukkah, and we do a lot more in the home. Not that we didn't do things in the home too. We always had a Shabbat dinner, but a lot of my Jewish upbringing was based around the synagogue. Hebrew school, confirmation class, a lot of Jewish life was based on that.
So was your mother also involved with the synagogue in terms of sisterhood or anything like that?
She was. She was involved in like many organizations in Denver. She was very involved at Rose Hospital and different National Jewish Hospital, uh, the, all different philanthropy organizations. I don't think she was like a huge role at the synagogue. Like my dad, it was kind of other than supporting him in
Right.
that endeavor.
And did you attend Sunday school there?
Yes, it was actually Hebrew school, and we had to go twice a week. So we'd go on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
So what did that lead to for girls? Did you have a bat mitzvah or were you confirmed?
So I was confirmed. I did not have a bat mitzvah. It was right at the time, and I think bat mitzvahs were just starting. So my sister, my younger sister, had a bat mitzvah. I did not, and my older sister did not. And it was just starting to have bat mitzvahs at BMH. Maybe like one or two my year, and then after that, more started.
So when you were, and you did you say that you went to East High School? I can't remember.
No, but my son.
Your son did.
Yes.
So what high school did you go to?
I went to Cherry Creek High School.
And did you encounter any anti-Semitism when you were growing up or in high school?
Growing up, I did not have a lot of anti-Semitism at all. I felt like it was very idyllic. I actually lived on a street called Cherry Street, and that was my college essay, that life is not always Cherry Street, USA, because it was always just wasn't exposed to a lot until later when I went to college and other things. But growing up, I did not experience it. I had a very strong BBYO community. At high school, they were very accepting of all people, and it was a very wonderful way to grow up.
So you were involved with BBYO?
Yes.
Did you go to regional conclaves and things like that?
Yes, I was a regional officer, and it was just a lot of fun. Some of my great friends from BBYO are still very close friends now.
And what about any other Jewish activities as a child?
I went to a summer camp, which was not technically a Jewish summer camp, but everyone was Jewish there. It was in Minnesota. And I had a lot of Jewish friends from around the country. And when I went to college, that was a great way to, there were people I connected with because of that. And not other, or mostly BBYO was my kind of anchor. I was very involved.
And where did you go to college?
I went to the University of Michigan, and I was in a Jewish sorority there.
And you said that you did encounter some anti-Semitism there?
Well, I was really surprised when I went to Michigan, because in Colorado, especially at Cherry Creek High School and everywhere around Denver, it was very assimilated. So being Jewish was my identity, but I also had so many other friends who weren't Jewish and many activities that weren't based on being Jewish. When I went to college, it seemed like I learned that a lot of the country is more more separated in, like, there are all Jewish neighborhoods or Jewish communities, and then there were Jewish sororities. And I remember the time when I was picking my sorority, I could have gone to many different sororities, and actually some of my best friends are in a different sorority that I almost went to. But I just love the fact that like everyone was Jewish, and that there was such a bond, that there was something that was built in where everyone was Jewish. So I pledged A-Phi and just met some of the best people in the world.
And what did you major in college?
I majored in political science.
And then did you go directly from there to law school then?
Yes.
And where did you go to law school?
American University in Washington, D.C.
And tell me a little bit about your career as a lawyer, please.
Okay. So I was always very interested in civil rights and equal justice, equality. I had heard many stories from my mother growing up about her Mary, who had worked with her family, and when my mom would sit on the back of the bus with Mary growing up in Virginia, and so many stories that my uncle, who would promote shows with some of the great jazz musicians at these big places in Virginia Beach, but he wasn't allowed in because he was Jewish. He'd have to go around the back. So many stories that just really made me feel so deeply about just all people being treated fairly and equal. So I really was, and also as a political science major, I was very interested in those kind of classes. So I wanted to go to school in Washington, D.C. And then in law school, I was very affected too by some amazing professors. One of my best professors, Jamie Raskin, who is a congressman from Maryland, had a real impact on me. And So I just always wanted to do social justice and, equal rights type of work. I went in law school. I worked for the NAACP headquarters, which was in Baltimore, Maryland. So I used to drive there, and I had some amazing experiences there working on voting rights projects. And then I also worked for the EEOC in Detroit on employment discrimination cases. And when I moved back to Denver and started my legal career, I actually was on the other side, which I also think is important, in defense, where I worked for a law firm, and then I worked for the Attorney General's office on civil rights cases.
I just have a follow-up question about your uncle and these jazz clubs. The jazz clubs were run by white people?
Yeah, some of them were like not necessarily jazz clubs, but like the prominent hotels in Virginia Beach, which are still there today, like the Cavalier Hotel, some of the country clubs. They had big bandstands. It's very, it's almost like, think of like the movie Grease. It was almost like that. They'd have those big dances and big bandstands, and people would dress up. And he would bring. He tells us these great. He was young. He was like in high school, and he was promoting some of these shows. And he was so. Who were some of the people he would bring? Evan, I can't remember. Some big acts, and then my mom too. When she was growing up, and my uncle and my aunt, they would go, like Harry Belafonte. They would go here at some of their clubs. They would hear them come sing, these great people that were such an influence on them. One time, my mom tells the story where they hid her under the table so she could hear this wonderful musician, because kids weren't allowed in, but they wanted her to be exposed to it.
Give me a sense of the time period when your uncle would have been at these clubs.
The 50s.
In the 50s. Okay, so in the 50s then, there were
50s and beginning of the 60s.
white country clubs and hotels where he was not welcome as a Jew. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Also, like the Norfolk Yacht Club. I remember there's a wonderful story that when he got married, and his father-in-law, who was a very prominent doctor in Virginia, who was not Jewish, said, "I don't want to belong somewhere that doesn't welcome my son-in-law." And like, just, they always were very just so willing to stand up for other people and for equality.
So in the 50s, the black musicians were allowed to perform in these places, but they would not have been welcome there as guests either, probably. Yes. So if they gave them food to eat, it would have been something in the back or...
That's the stories they tell.
Right.
Yes.
It's hard to believe that was the 1950s in the United States, isn't it? I shouldn't be editorializing, but...
Yeah, really interesting stories. He has some great stories where he drove up to Detroit to meet with Motown, and like just some fun things. He's a great person, my uncle, Richard Levin.
So he had a large role in promoting careers of these black musicians?
Yes.
And when you did the work with the NAACP as in college, were you being paid for that, or was that volunteer work that you did?
So the EOC was paid. The NAACP was my college internship. So I think I did get a stipend, but wasn't. And I also worked on the Hill. Senator Tim Wirth, also an internship, not a paid job. But I've always been very interested in the Black Jewish relationship and the collaboration and the relations. That's something that I definitely worked a lot of programming around with NCJW as well, but it's been something that's been, very, like, I think, part of me. Even some of my close friends in Denver, just a lot of things that are very important to me deal with that relationship.
So back to what you started doing professionally in Denver, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I started at a law firm, and then I worked there for a while. I got great experience, trial experience. I did litigation. And then I went to the Attorney General's office. I worked with Ken Salazar, who's the most amazing person, before he became a senator and then Secretary of the Interior. And I had great people at the Attorney General's office who I worked with. Beth McCann, who's our district attorney, who's going out of office, and just some amazing people who had another very positive influence on me. I represented the Department of Corrections in the kosher food cases when inmates would ask for kosher food. And when I came on, they were kind of figuring that program out from a book. And I hired Rabbi Heisler, and we went and toured the correctional facilities, how we could make kosher food available, and did some work with that. And then a lot of employment cases and discrimination cases.
Mostly with Black people?
All different types of discrimination cases, disability cases, gender discrimination, a lot of sexual harassment.
And then as an adult, you and your husband have created your own kind of Jewish existence. And how does that differ from the environment in your home when you were growing up?
So my husband and I, early on, my husband's also very connected to Israel and Jewish. Like, he had worked for the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. and started the Denver Jewish Film Festival here many years ago. And so it's always been like a big part of both of our lives. But connected, my husband's very interested in music and arts. And so that he brought a lot of that into our lives. I didn't have as much of that growing up, all the Jewish songs and always playing the guitar and having sing-alongs, and our home was always open in that way. When we would build the sukkah, it would always be all night singing songs, and my kids have really taken that on. My middle son is a music minor. He plays the saxophone in the jazz band at University of Michigan. He's also in the School of Public Policy, Ford School. So I feel like he's a good mix of both of us. And then my daughter also, she went to Denver, the School of the Arts, and has always been involved in theater, arts, singing. And my youngest is also at Denver School of the Arts. So I think combining kind of that Yiddishkeit with the passion for arts is something that definitely was created new with our family that maybe I didn't have as much growing up. And a lot of the Jewish life is centered around that. I should say one thing too, that going back to the career, that was all when I was a lawyer, which was 20 years ago, because then I went into real estate, and for a long, just because it was more, it was easier with a family of three and spending so much time like with community involvement and instead of doing litigation. And in my mind, when I first started, I thought, oh, I'll go back to law, or like that's the way to help people, being a lawyer. I'm not helping people. And then I started to realize that in real estate, there's a lot of room. It's actually one of the big areas to help foster diversity, equity, and inclusion, where it's not a profession where it's as far along as some others, just because of home ownership and property, like different restrictions through the years. So I started to see that maybe you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer, practicing as a lawyer to also help with equality and helping improve your community.
So let's turn our attention now to the National Council of Jewish Women.
Okay.
Was this an organization that your mother was involved with?
So my mother was involved. She tells the stories about how she and Anita Heitler used to do the newsletter, and they'd have the babies on the floor, and they'd work on the newsletter over at Anita's house. So my mother was involved, and my grandmother was Selma Miller, was very involved in National Council of Jewish Women, National Jewish Hospital, many different organizations in Denver.
So do you remember how you personally became first involved?
I do. Yeah, it was because of Glenda Kaufman, amazing woman and leader in the community. I was very involved with the Jewish Federation. I wasn't involved with NCJW. I didn't really know about it so much. But I was involved with Jewish Colorado, which was previously Allied Jewish Federation. And I loved it. I loved, like, I chaired choices. I did all almost every position kind of there, as far as we started like a women's professional group. I chaired Date with the State. So I would go to these meetings for the Jewish Community Relations Council, and Glenda was there, and we worked together several years doing Date with the State. And she said, would you come to an NCJW meeting? I think you'd really like it. And when I first came to NCJW, I couldn't believe it, because I'd always any volunteer thing I had done had been more philanthropy based. And this was like community, like roll up your sleeves, grassroots, like like do-it-yourself kind of projects, like a sing-along at the nursing home, or going to meet with legislators directly. The JCRC evolved more into that as well, but it was just like really just, I couldn't believe all the opportunity that was there to help with women, children, families, equality, justice. I was like, this is for me. So
About what year are we talking about now?
let's see, that was like probably like 2010, maybe. Maybe a little later, because I was definitely like very involved with Federation when my daughter was younger. Remember, that was a big thing. And then my boy, so more like 2012 probably.
And did you go participate in Date with the State?
Yeah, so I planned Date with the State for several times, several years. And I loved that program with Janet Sherman, who used to work at Jewish Colorado. She was really instrumental in getting that program off the ground. And we had brought different ambassadors to speak. One year, I think the first year I got involved, I had asked Ken Salazar to speak since he was my former boss, and he did a wonderful job speaking. And it was always a really impactful day.
So that's a once a year. That was a once a year
Every
event?
other year. So one year we would do a candidates forum, and that's when you invite all the candidates to speak and provide to the Jewish community education on elections. And then one year you would do Date with the State. So we would alternate, and I was very involved with that. It just seemed really worthwhile to bring everyone together for both of those.
So tell me, I understand. Well, why don't you explain for posterity what the Candidates Forum was like when you were involved with it?
So the Candidates Forum is always a nonpartisan event that invites all candidates. There were always state candidates. That was sometimes an issue because you had to cut it off somewhere. So we did not have citywide candidates at the Candidates Forum, but statewide candidates are all invited to come. And they have the state candidates all are invited to have meet and greet, have tables, provide information. And then there's a forum where questions are asked to the federal candidates and also statewide candidates for the whole state. So like a state senator would be invited to have a table, but like a U.S. senator would be invited to the forum to answer questions with their opponent.
So who would moderate these events?
So we had different moderators through the years. It was usually someone from the media.
And they would have a prepared list of questions?
Some prepared. We'd have people send in questions ahead of time, and then we'd also have questions submitted the day of the event that were then chosen and asked. But it was a great way to educate the Jewish community, and it's a great service to the legislators as well, because they get to have this community to talk to and really hear what the issues are and be able to take that in and be able to represent the people better.
And did you feel that there was a big impact in terms of the press being there and writing about what happened at the proceedings?
Well, we hoped for that. I don't feel like the press was the biggest focus of the forum. It was really to educate the community and to create that relationship with the legislators so that they knew what the issues are that are important to our community.
And tell me more about Date with the State then.
So Date with the State was also for education for the Jewish community. So we would have, and it was also a lobby. Well, it wasn't a lobby day till later, but it was an opportunity to see the legislative process and let the community see how policies are made. So we would meet at the old Supreme Court chambers, which is my favorite room in the Capitol, the Colorado State Capitol, and we would have a speaker that would provide some education, always different. Sometimes it would be on Israel, sometimes it would be on special issues that are affecting the Jewish community, anti-Semitism, even like resources, water rights, anything that we thought was relevant at the time for the community. We tried to find a special speaker that would provide a service to the community to get to talk to and ask questions. And then after, so you come, there would be a legislative breakfast where you get to have breakfast with the legislatures, and then you would have the talk in the old Supreme Court chamber, and then you would go observe the House in session or the Senate in session.
Great. And was that so that political activity was what really drew you into NCJW, would you say?
Definitely that, but also the community service piece. I love the community service. When I was president, we really tried to bring back some of the older programs, like sing-alongs at nursing homes, and we did always did holidays at the Gathering Place for women who are experiencing problems with housing, poverty. And so we would have a Hanukkah party. We did a Passover Seder. We would always try to bring the community. The community service piece was very important to me as well. I think that equally.
And when did you become president?
I think it was 2017. Pretty sure it was 2017. Prior to that, I had been the vice president of community service, and also vice president of public affairs.
And how many years were you president?
2 years.
Did you attend any large NCJW conferences?
I did. I went to the Washington conference twice, and I went to the twice to the national conventions. Once it was in Atlanta and I think DC as well.
And what about those conferences got you most excited?
Well, it really we did lobbying. We went to the Hill and lobbied. At that time, I had some pretty strong relations with some of our Colorado representatives and senators. So that was really great to be able to come in an official capacity and say, this is what I'm really passionate about, and that's important in our organization, what we stand for. I felt really proud with that. And I remember standing on the steps of the Supreme Court. That was like just the justice, the feeling of all those women. I've met some of the most amazing women from NCJW, people who really aren't always in the limelight, aren't maybe not, someone everyone knows in the community, but people who just have such big hearts and who are working towards whatever good they can kind of give out into the world. And it's really powerful to be in groups like that.
So what were some of the big issues that you lobbied for?
Always the choice is very important. That has always been important. Back when I was in college, I remember going to the National Organization of Women to the March on Washington in the 90s. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I thought this was like done. And then like we're back doing this. And that was just like so important. I'm like, we can't go backwards. Voting rights. We talked, preschool, the preschool programs in Colorado to have all children be able to have a fair start to education with some of the legislation that's been done in Colorado with preschool programs. That was really important. Israel, there's been some trying to remember, there have been different things with Israel, different things have been introduced, but that's been a big focus. The courts, always like lobbying for like certain judges to be approved, judges that represent women well and show a strong sense of justice and fairness.
So of everything that you've done with NCJW, what has made you proudest? Do you feel that you actually had some sort of an impact that made a difference?
That's hard. It might be twofold. I mean, this is going to be very honest, but during my presidency, it was a really time of transition. It was a very difficult time. It's probably one of the most difficult, everyone might feel this way, but it might have been one of the most difficult times because it was really a transition from the old guard to like modernizing the organization. And I think there was a time where there was a question whether NCJW in Colorado would even survive. And we were on very old systems where like the list was being kept in writing, and trying to modernize things, but also bring everyone along was a very difficult job. I'm not sure I did it that well because it was very hard to, there were changes that needed to be made to bring the organization into current times and to create longevity, to bring it onto the internet, social media, created the Instagram page for the first time or the Facebook page for the first time. So there were some changes that needed to be made to bring it into current times and to bring in new people too. And there's some resistance to that. I think it was a hard time, but I definitely got a lot personally it was difficult. But I think in the end, the changes that were made during that transition, those 2 transition years, have put NCAW on a really good track going forward. We had to pull in Robert's Rules of Law. We had to like be very legal in like how we got things approved in order to really be able to propel NCAW into the future. The other difficulty during that time is that the country was very divisive. For the like, there's always, but President Trump had just been elected, and we have strong women on all sides in our organization, which makes us so much stronger because it's a nonpartisan organization. So we have strong women, and so there was a lot of tension based around that, and certain groups that wanted to really go one direction that threatened our nonpartisanship and our nonprofit status. So I had to be the bad person to kind of say, no, we can't do this. We have to stay within this this framework. And so I think that was really difficult, but I'm really proud that we were able to weather that difficult time and get on a very good track. I'm very thankful for Jackie for then taking it and moving us even further. So I think that transition was difficult, but I'm proud that I stuck with it and was able to kind of keep things on track.
So when you took over as president, were all of the meetings still being held during the day? Was
Yes.
that one of the issues that you had to confront?
All the meetings were during the day, and there was, well, we had some changes that needed to be made.
Right.
So to bring new people in. One thing, on a positive, one of the things I'm really proud of too is that we started a program called Ask the Doctor. I did that as community service vice president, but we continued in. It's grown, and it's a wonderful way to help educate women on different things concerning health and wellness, because I believe that's so important that before we can help others, to make sure that we're in a good spot. And mental health has been so important. That has been a big focus of mine, both in community service and public relations.
And how does Ask the Doctor work?
So Ask the Doctor is that there are amazing doctors in our community that are women, strong female doctors, but also male doctors that provide services to women that are just such champions of women. So we put together a panel of trying to get all different areas of health and wellness. So we had like a geriatric doctor, OBGYN, nutritionist, all different types of doctors. And we put together the panel, and then people can come. It's a free service where they can come and learn from the panel. And also we had breakout sessions for teens. That was really powerful. The psychologist, special person who worked with the teens, nutritionists, people about body image and self-esteem. And it's always just a really wonderful day where people walk away with something that is of value to help them feel, increase their health and wellness.
So what are you the proudest of that NCJW has done? And I guess you were proud of what you accomplished during your presidency. Is there anything outside of that makes you feel very proud too?
Since my presidency, I did public relations after, public affairs after, and it was during COVID, and it was a very bad time in our country with race relations. And I mean, there's always a bad time, it seems like, but it was George Floyd and some really terrible things not that things didn't happen before, but we didn't have them on video, or things that were just so disturbing, like to our souls. So during COVID, we were all in our houses, but we set up a series of with race relations, where we spoke to someone from the Denver Police Department, prosecutors, educators, teachers, people from the community, both communities. And I was really proud of that program because I learned so much and everyone learned so much. And I think it brought our communities closer together. After that, our program, the Jewish Colorado actually did a similar program. So I think they saw that there was value in that. We had invited them to ours as well. But it, it really made an impact. I was at something when our mayor was going out of office at Botanic Gardens, and I ran in. There was a police officer there. I'm like, Carla, and it's the person who had spoken to us, and to have that connection, to feel like I can walk somewhere and see someone who had taken her time to tell us about different problems in the police department and things going on and ways to improve them, and to really like take the time to learn. I feel like really proud that NCAW was a leader in that, and that now more than ever, there's such a disconnect between the Black community and the Jewish community, and I feel NCAW is like I feel so good because like, oh, there are people we can go to, there's resources, because we've built those relationships and they're so important. And I've actually been setting up some lunches with people who I have developed relationships because of NCAW, to just learn more like why is there so much discord right now, and trying to understand, and why isn't there more support from the Black community to the Jewish community. And I wouldn't have that foundation without NCAW, and I'm just so proud of NCAW Colorado, because I feel like they just took it on. It wasn't a program that's been done somewhere else, and it'll last forever, those relationships.
Well, I'm very curious to learn whether you have any takeaways from those preliminary conversations right now, because this is an important issue facing the whole country.
It's been amazing, because I will say, it just, when everything happened after October 7th in Israel, it just hit me so hard in my soul to like see on social media, or some of the people I thought were such big supporters, to hear silence, or sometimes even see them like something that I thought maybe, was anti-Israel, or not supportive of the Jewish community. And I thought the support would be much bigger, because my whole world has kind of been like, oh, we all work together. And all of a sudden, like, it really pulled the rug out from under me. And so I really wanted to hear more. I was very angry too. And I built up a lot of stories in my mind about it. Like, oh, they must hate this, or they're anti-Semitic, or trying to cancel people. And I was like, you know what, let me step back and take some time and schedule some of these lunches. And when I met with people face to face, I really learned very different stories, that there is still support from the Black community. They do very much collaborate with us and understand, how devastating it has been for Israel. I think there's some issues that people may have with the Israeli government that is different than with the Jewish people in Colorado. There's definitely a rise of anti-Semitism. I feel like some of the people I've met with are the champions in the communities to fight that anti-Semitism, because we've made these relationships. And if that's more important than just a group of people that all agree the same way. So it's really important that someone who maybe differs a little bit with us, but is supportive, that is a connection that we don't cancel, because they are the people in the community that can make a difference, that aren't our community.
And they haven't spoken out yet publicly, but you're hopeful that maybe they will in the future?
They have made some. I mean, one thing someone explained to me is that there's also some safety risks. These aren't people who are maybe the senator or the governor who have security, and they have people, they'll put something out there and people like immediately attack them. There's a lot of really ugly behavior going on right now. So people also aren't going to put themselves totally at risk. But as far as like, there was someone who told me something came up about something artistic, about protecting like the rights of, not the rights, but protecting the Jewish story, and that they spoke up and said it's really important that history be told correctly. And we have special people out there that stand up for Jewish people, and it's just really important, and very appreciative of them. So they don't have to necessarily go out and put everything out on Facebook to know that they are still supporting us. One thing that I did learn from that meeting too is they told me that it's really disappointing to see some of their friends who have maybe for years fought for equality, justice. They may have been the person who was at the rally, who bound together after the Tree of Life shooting or other things, and then one day they don't say something and they're canceled. They're like you can't look at it that way. So
Shifting gears a little bit, who are the NCJW members who have really impressed you over the years?
oh, there are many. There are many. There's so many wonderful women in this organization. Glenda Kaufman's definitely one, the one who brought me in. I always wonder, like, she's just so tireless in always being consistent with the activities with Date with the State, Canada's Forum. Always proud of NCW, making sure when we would do things with Jewish Colorado, she always wanted to make sure that they knew that NCW brought that program to them. She was always very important, and she would have me. She would always remind me before I'd have a meeting to make sure that history is reflected, and that the Jewish women of Colorado, are recognized. So Glenda for sure. Gloria Kern is amazing. She has been very instrumental in the scholarship program, which has provided so many education scholarships to women through young women through the years. Education is so important, and I know she's had to fight for that program sometimes, and she does such a beautiful job keeping that intact. And since then, Shelley has done a wonderful job growing that and bringing that also into a whole new age. So
A couple of clarification questions. What's Shelley's last name, and are these scholarships available only to Jewish women?
Shelley Tatur. And as of now, yes, they're for Jewish women. And one of the things that people look for sometimes in the scholarship too is a connection to the community, giving back to the community. So they are for Jewish women.
And in terms of your life personally, what sort of difference has NCJW made to you?
Can I go back to that
sure.
question too
Yes,
about
I'm
those
sorry.
Jewish women?
Yes.
Because also I have to say Jackie, my sister Jackie Beckett. I remember when I first asked Jackie to get involved, and she was like, "Well, I don't know if I have time." I was like, "Oh, Jackie, you're gonna like this." Like, and little did we know. I mean, it's just everything, and she's taken the organization to a whole new level, and she really helped me through that tumultuous time as well when we were doing the transition, and was a great advisor. We really owe a lot to Jackie. I believe that NCAW Colorado section is where it's at today because of her and many of the other women whose shoulders she has stood on.
And so in terms of your own life, I know you're proud of what you've accomplished through NCJW, and I'm sure it's been a great source of satisfaction to you. Do you want to amplify on that at all?
I am very proud of NCAW. I think it's a wonderful organization. I love the history. I love the old pictures by the Western Union wagon back in, that is the oldest Colorado advocacy organization in our state. And the women that way back when, what they did for women's rights, and that history and the continuity is amazing. I love being part of that. I think it's just a very strong, special organization that has a history like no other.
And you talked about your earlier involvement with what's now called Jewish Colorado. Have you been involved with other Jewish organizations in Denver?
Yes, I love all the Jewish organizations in Denver. I love to support Jewish causes and National Jewish, Jewish National Fund. My friend Nancy Alterman, who I met through NCAW, she's gotten me involved there at some events. And my daughter had gone to Denver Jewish Day School. I love, providing, supporting Jewish education. The Jewish Film Festival that my husband started. I remember he had owned the Bluebird Theater at the time, and he was involved in the Washington Jewish Festival. This is long ago, like over 30 years ago. And he wanted to bring a Jewish film festival to Denver. So they were going to do it at the Bluebird Theater, and he said it really should be at the JCC. And so those first few years, when they were starting it at the JCC, that was very special, being involved with that. And really...
I should ask you, excuse me, what your husband's name is and what year you got married also.
My husband's name Evan Dechtman, and we got married in 1997. We met on IST, a high school program from Colorado that goes to Israel. Hi, Lulu.
Whoa. And do you belong to a congregation, or when your children were young, did you belong to one?
So we belonged to BMH growing up, and my daughter was bat mitzvah there, and my middle son. And then we moved to Cherry Creek, and we've become very involved with Chabad Cherry Creek, which is a wonderful organization. Rabbi Shmuley and Zeldy Engel, they bring such Yiddishkeit, they bring everyone into the community, and we're really thankful for having met them because they add a lot to our lives. They're coming over on Thursday to celebrate Hanukkah, and we're just in their sukkah. But I think connecting with them has been very important to us in this kind of newer phase of our Jewish life.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't cover in the interview? Otherwise,
I think we covered a lot.
I know probably the tape is running out or the batteries have died or whatever. I don't know how to describe today's technology, but thank you very
I would
much.
just say one thing. I really am proud to be part of the Denver Jewish community. I feel like we're very unique and special. I have many friends in other communities around the country, and there's something about Denver that just I feel like we have such access to our legislators and our community leaders, and everyone's so connected and open into other communities within Denver that is unique to Denver, like with different communities of color and different parts of the city. It's just a very unifying feeling, and I really love living here and being part of that.
And just based on what you've said, it seems as if NCJW has contributed to making that kind of environment here.
Absolutely. The thing about NCJW that is different than some of the other Jewish organizations is NCJW reaches out to all communities. So when we do a school program, we're in a school that has like a great need for, like, most of the kids are on like free and reduced lunch. And so we're in that community making a difference for children that aren't part of the Jewish community necessarily. And when we go to, there's like many different things that NCJW does that are not, they're not based just on the Jewish community. It's Jewish women doing good things for women and children outside the Jewish community and throughout the whole community. And that's very unique. And that's something that I just love about NCJW, that it's a great representation of Jewish women doing great things.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.